Hello, welcome to another session with Kabbalah, the Dragon, the Priest, and Governments, Part 2. Last time when we talked about this subject, we spoke about the dragon, and we also talked about the division of Israel. The first part of Israel, it follows Jesus Christ, and it follows the way of Jehovah. But the second part gets hardened, and they follow after the dragon. Paul wrote about them, and it said, "A hardening has come upon part of Israel until the full number of Gentiles come in. They," meaning the ones who are hardened, "are enemies of God for your sake. We were once disobedient to God, but received mercy because of their disobedience, in order that, by the mercy shown to us, they also may receive mercy. And in that way, all of Israel is forgiven." Well, how is that possible? We also spoke about the cycle of assessment. And that cycle of assessment is under the direction of the dragon. It is the last 4 sephers on the tree of life, or the Kabbalah, in Had, Netzach, Yesod, and Melkut. We learned that there were 4 tests that the dragon performs, the first being famine, pestilence, captivity, and death, or the sword. We also needed to look at something else with this, because you can have a famine and that be totally caused by natural phenomena, such as a flood, and it destroys all the fields. And then people go hungry because there are no plants coming up out of the field anymore until next year. But there are also behaviors that we humans can exhibit which can cause famine or pestilence or captivity or the sword. And in that way, when we give in to those behaviors, we are helping the dragon in his testing process. And some of those are greed. So let's say that I feel that I need to have more and more and more. If you have a pie and you take 90% of it, and there are 10 people who want to eat off of that pie, well, if I take 90%, then the other 9 people only have that one slice to divvy up amongst themselves, and that can cause famine. Another example is fornication. When you sleep from person to person to person, you help spread disease. Captivity, an example of that is peer pressure. When we give in to what other people think and want for us, and we feel that we have to go along with the crowd. And lastly, war. When we go into another country and we kill innocent people, well, that is tested by the sword. And all of these behaviors have one thing in common, one common factor, and that factor is fear. It is the fear of not having enough, the fear of not being accepted, whatever it is. But the Bible also tells us about this. It says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love." The Bible also tells us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And so again, when we talk about greed, what really is greed? Well, greed is the fear of not having enough. Not having enough of what? Not having enough to feel safe and secure, and to feel that, something won't come along and make you have to struggle to survive. Fornication. We want to feel accepted. We want to feel loved. We're afraid of being left out. We're afraid that maybe our friends won't see us as being cool. And that brings us to peer pressure and war. When we get angry at someone, we really are afraid of something, afraid that something might happen, something to us, something that might take away our state of being. Well, the Bible is all about building the kingdom. And Isaiah described what that new kingdom would look like. In the new earth is a place without weeping. There is a place where we build and no one else inhabits it, or we grow and no one else eats it. All sorrows are forgotten. In other words, we have learned to get over those fears that the dragon tests us on. Jesus also referred to the kingdom of promise to Israel all the time. I mean, half the time he talked about parables, he spoke of the kingdom. But what's really interesting is that each miracle that Jesus performed was designed to defeat one of the dragon's tests. For example, the test of famine is defeated by the feeding of 4,000 and 5,000. The test of pestilence is defeated by healing the sick and the lame and the deaf and the dumb. The test of captivity is defeated by casting the demons out. And the test of death is defeated by resurrection of Lazarus and the little girl. When we really look at when Jesus appeared on the scene, his appearance corresponds to Teppereth. This Sefer here is the end of the creative cycle, and he becomes the final foundation on which the kingdom will be built. And yet we find right before his death, he approaches Jerusalem and he weeps. And he says, "If you had only known, even you, Israel, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace." And that's really what this is about. What makes for peace? Well, it's defeating the 4 tests, finding a way to conquer those. But now they are hidden from your eyes because you did not know the time of your visitation. Now, when we go back and look at the Kabbalah model again, and we see that Jesus came during the time of Teppereth, we learned in an earlier lesson that the middle pillar is where we measure potential. And each one of these spheres corresponds to a point in time. For example, Kether is when Adam and Eve were made, and Teppereth is when Jesus came. And Yesod corresponds to the defeat of the Catholic Church and being replaced by Protestantism and science and the Industrial Revolution. It also corresponds to the 6th day where in the Law of Moses you have triple production. And that also happened according to its time. And so each of these might very well be, each of these on the middle pillar might very well be times of visitation. And so it's something interesting that we need to pay attention to. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the law and the dragon. Now, many Jews say that they follow the law of Moses rather than the Christ, and that's fine. But what we have to understand is that the law was not designed to defeat the dragon in the 4 tests. Paul said that the law made nothing perfect. And so what is perfection? Well, perfection is the moment when our love conquers all fear. That is, we defeat the dragon on all fronts. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with the same sacrifices which they offer continually, year by year, make those who approach perfect. It was not designed to bring about the kingdom. It was not designed to defeat the dragon. And yet the law itself is perfect. For in Psalms it says, "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul." So the question is, well, what is the law perfect in doing? If it's not to bring about the kingdom, what is it supposed to do? And that will be the topic of our next lesson the next time. If you want to know more about Jewish and Christian symbology, please join us on Facebook, and where we discuss symbolism, prophecy, hidden meanings in the Bible, Kabbalah, and Bible philosophy. Bye for now.